It looks like even more Sonic and Shadow Generations news is pouring in. It's looking actually pretty promising. They're talking about future game releases with Shadow. They're talking about some cool things that are going on with the game, so let's get into it. Let's see what we got. We have a translation provided by Sonic City Net. Let's see what they're talking about. Thank you for doing the hard work of translating this for us from Japanese to English. So let's start the interview. It says, in the recent State of Play, DLC linked to the movie Sonic and Shadow Tokyo Mission, which is what it's called in Japan, was announced. Was it decided from the beginning of development that this DLC would be created? Nakamura said no, it wasn't decided from the beginning. However, Sonic and Shadow Generations was developed with the expectation that Shadow would play a major role in the movie. So we had the idea of creating content that would tie in with the film. The concrete discussions about DLC only started once both the game and movie were well into production. When we expressed that we infinitely want to create content related to the movie team was also enthusiastic about it. While the worldviews of the movie and the game are slightly different, this DLC creates a flow where people who discover Sonic through the movie will want to play the game, or those who have played the game will be encouraged to watch the movie. I think that's a really brilliant idea for them. Obviously, you're going to bring in a lot of new eyes when the movie comes out. So how are you going to feed them content? Well, they have the mobile games, they have Rumble coming out, they got Sonic Speed Simulator, they now have Sonic and Shadow Generations as a good entry point into the series, especially considering Shadow is going to be playing a big role. The next question says, this year's theme for the Sonic brand is Fearless Year of Shadow, and Shadow has been featured across various media. How is this theme decided? Well, obviously, it's probably the movie, right? Nakamura says, as I mentioned earlier, Sonic and Shadow Generations was developed with the third movie in mind. While linking the movie and the game posed some challenges, we wanted to bring them closer together so that overall the Sonic experience would be more cohesive and easier for the audience to understand. Although we weren't directly provided with the movie script in advance, Shadow appears at the end of the second film, so it was clear that he would play a prominent role. That's how we decided on the direction for the game. The decision to expand Shadow's presence in other areas outside of movies and games came a little later, which led to the conclusion, let's feature Shadow across the brand this year. No surprise there. Obviously, with the movie coming out, a lot of new fans are coming into the series. You're going to want to introduce this really cool character from your source material to try and bring in a lot of those movie fans and create that familiarity. All right, next up. Compared to a while ago, the Sonic brand as a whole feels more cohesive. Games are being released consistently every year, and there's also movies and events. We get the sense that there's a conscious effort to continuously provide content and maintain the brand's momentum. When did this system start to take shape? This is actually a good question. I'm kind of curious to see what he has to say about this. Nakamura says it's difficult to pinpoint exactly when, but as the Sonic IP grew larger, probably because of the first movie, I think that's when this whole trend kind of started, we realized that we needed to think beyond just games. This included collaborating with other companies for various products and experimenting with different approaches. We began focusing on planning out themes for Sonic as an IP in a more organized way, making sure to roll out content steadily each year to grow our audience. This is music to my ears because, you know, in 2025, we don't really know what's coming next for the Sonic franchise. As far as we're concerned, once Sonic Movie 3 comes out, there's nothing really on the slate of projects to come out as far as I'm aware. Nothing has been officially announced. It's going to be a weird transition period. Maybe something else will get announced before Movie 3 comes out, similar to how when Movie 2 was rolling out, Movie 3 was announced before it even released. I'm curious to see what's going to happen. A lot of Sonic tubers want to make content. We're like, what's next? Rumble's coming out, so maybe there will be a big push on that. I'm not so convinced that Rumble's going to be that big, but we'll have to see. Next up, it says one of the catalysts for this mindset shift was probably the first Sonic movie. Okay, so I got a little ahead of myself. Nakamura says, yes, that's right. After the release of the first movie, the sales of the games also increased. I especially feel this when I go on business trips overseas. When I first visit stores and look at the shelves for games and toys, I always see Sonic products displayed alongside other major IPs. Since the staff in Japan doesn't often get to experience Sonic's popularity abroad firsthand, I try to take them to supermarkets or apparel sections during overseas trips whenever possible. Katsuyuki, do you also feel that there are more Sonic products on the shelves? They said, yes, when I go to the game sections, I see Sonic games prominently displayed, and there are also many different types of plush toys available. It really feels like Sonic is being recognized as a major title. That's true, man. If they keep this momentum up, third movie does well, Rumble does good, Sonic and Shadow Generations is actually seen as a competent, good platformer, we could be in for more of this Sonic revival that's been taking place ever since the 2020 started. Next Next up, it says, I believe that the cohesive development of the Sonic IP contributed to the creation of this movie's DLC. How did the development of the DLC progress? Nakamura says, the number of staff at SEGA who know the specific details of the movie is quite limited. We didn't know much either, but we were informed that the setting would be in Tokyo and that Shadow would appear. Based on that information, we began to brainstorm and develop the content. Next question. In this DLC, Shadow's voice is provided by Keanu Reeves, who plays Shadow in the movie, right? Nakamura says, I remember feeling flustered when we were asked to prepare a script for recording lines for the DLC before the content was finalized. I thought, what should we do? Later, we received the recorded data from the US, but I was told by Izuka, please don't ask whose voice that data belongs to. So even the game staff didn't know whose voice it was. That's pretty interesting. So the casting was kept a secret from you as well, Nakamura. And they said, yes, we learned about the cast the same time as everyone else did when we saw the movie trailer. Bro, we knew Keanu was Shadow for like 5 months before that. When we listened to the audio data, I had a feeling, could it be? But it was only after watching the movie trailer that I was finally able to confirm it. In the DLC introduction video, we see scenes from Shibuya. Did you go to that location scouting there? And they said, yes, it's a place I'm quite familiar with, but I walked around the area thinking, what would it be like if Shadow ran here? Also, since the setting is Tokyo, there may be other locations besides Shibuya that appear as well. Okay, so maybe there's going to be more locations in the Sonic movie. So now that we're done talking about the movie DLC, this question says, now, looking forward to future information, I'd like to ask about the main game. This summer and autumn, there have been opportunities to try out the game in various locations around the world. What has been the response from both domestic and international audiences? And they said, Shadow is a dark hero and has a different charm compared to Sonic, but I feel that his appeal is going to be conveyed well. People are saying he's so cool, which makes me happy because that's exactly what we aimed for during development. Bro, they're gonna make Shadow cooler than Sonic by the end of this. By the end of Generations and the movie, people are gonna be thinking that Shadow's the main character of the series, bro, I swear. Nakamura says there hasn't been a game with Shadow as the main character for many years, so we knew that the fans had a strong desire for Shadow to shine again. Since we don't have a lot of development lines, it's been challenging to create a game featuring Shadow, but we finally made it happen. With the implementation of Doom Power, Shadow grows wings and takes on octopus and squid-like forms, and fans have welcomed that. Many Sonic fans create fan art, and we've already seen various artworks emerge. You can really feel that Shadow is gaining momentum. Absolutely. Next question says, nevertheless, Shadow's identity as a dark hero is really cool. I think this main visual emphasizes that seriousness and coolness. All right, next up, they talk about the Doom Power. So how many types of Doom Powers are there? Nakamura says there are several types, including Doom Sphere, which launches Chaos Spears at multiple targets, Doom Surf, which allows movement over water, Doom Blast, which enables continuous attacks on enemies, launching them away and warping to their location. In fact, you can use Doom Blast to create some incredible shortcuts on certain courses. We've designed mechanisms that utilize Doom Power in all the courses, so I hope players enjoy exploring the routes. So let me just pause for a second and say that this is going to be big for replayability. It seems that obviously you don't have all these powers unlocked when you first start the game, but as you complete the game and complete all the levels, you can go back into the levels and find newer routes. This is going to be extremely important for this game because Sonic Generations is like a 2 or 3 hour game. Shadow Generations is going to be like probably 2 on the longer end. So going back and being able to replay the levels is going to be the major appeal to this game and truly justify that price tag. He says, additionally, there's Doom Wing, which gives Shadow wings, and Doom Morph, which allows him to navigate through special terrains. We released a video in August called the Doom Power Trailer, where we introduce these features in detail, so please check them out. Nakamura then goes on to say the element of exploration, such as discovering, wow, I can get to this area by using Doom Power, adds depth to the game. Thinking about things like, oh, since there's a ring here, what does that mean? Or how do I get to this spot? By learning how to use these abilities, the way to play will keep expanding, and we've really put effort into creating that aspect in this game. Again, that's pretty much everything I just talked about before. Here's an interesting point right here. They also said you can complete the game without using any Doom powers. That's a nice thing in the back of my head to keep in mind. We've designed it to be accessible for those who may have learned about Sonic and Shadow through the movies or anime and don't have much gaming experience. On the other hand, users who want to master their times can achieve faster results by using Doom Power and Chaos Control. So I encourage you to give that a try. Using Chaos Control even pauses the time during the game. So like I said before, this is going to be extremely good and beneficial for replayability. Speedrunners are going to have a field day with this game and have a lot of fun, but also it's going to be accessible for new players. So catch me getting the best time. That's all I got to say. None of you guys are going to get a better time than me. Just put it out there, okay? So next question says, while using Chaos Control, the space-time continuum warps and time stops, allowing allowing only Shadow to move ahead on the course, ultimately shortening the time, right? He says, exactly, so you're aiming to perfect your time. You need to think about where to use Chaos Control when developing your own route and playstyles. Chaos Control is actually going to slow down your game timer, which is pretty cool. As far as speedrunning goes, it's not going to affect it, but as far as the game timer goes and getting those S ranks, that's going to matter. Nakamura also said the development staff is also working hard, saying, I just updated my time, but with Sonic, users often set records that far surpass those of the development team. That's absolutely true. They said there are times when we discover routes we didn't even know about, like, oh, there was a route here, so we're looking forward to seeing that after the game's release. So there's going to be routes in the game that the developers aren't even aware of, which is really cool. All right, next, I'd like to ask about the story. Yes, this is actually my most anticipated part of this game. The story trailer was recently released, and fans were excited to see characters like Mephiles and Maria. Okay, here we go. Nakamura says, basically, the story will revolve around Shadow's connections with Black Doom and Maria. Whoa, and Maria. So is Maria going to be like a prominent part of this story? You know, it's not like she's just nostalgia bait. She's actually going to be featured in the story and maybe a more prominent role than we would have imagined. The new element, Doom Power, is something that Black Doom shares with Shadow, and there's certainly an intention behind that. We hope players will enjoy seeing how Shadow approaches this situation. As for Mephiles, while he plays a significant role, he's more of a guest character. Yep, that's it. I told you guys. Similar to how Perfect Chaos functions, similar to how you fight classic Metal Sonic, he's probably just going to be a boss that you fight one time and then that's it. So we'll see what happens. He says, though perhaps that term doesn't fully capture his presence. However, he's a character that can appear precisely because of the Generations aspect. So basically that's soft confirmation that Mephiles is going to have next to nothing to do with the story. He's just going to be featured as a boss to get Sonic fans like me hyped. Like, oh my God, that's Mephiles. But as far as his involvement with the story, I'd imagine it's minimal because he says outright that it's a guest character. A little disappointing, but also not surprising. There's a lot of lore to cover in this story, so I think we'll be okay. Okay, more Mephiles stuff. He says, I think Mephiles has a strong fan base. Were you all aware of his popularity? Nakamura says, given the long history of the series, players have different attachments to the characters, bosses, and gameplay styles depending on which game they started with. It's both a joy and a challenge. However, with this being Generations, we were able to depict interactions with older characters. In the future, if we have titles that relate to past stories, it's possible that we'll include nostalgic characters as well. So if you guys want Mephiles to have more of a story, maybe one day there's a chance for that. But soft confirmation, don't expect too much out of Mephiles other than a cool boss fight with maybe some fan service. All right, next question is asking about the Dark Beginnings animation with Shadow and Maria. Let's see what they have to say. Nakamura says the anime Dark Prelude connects the story of Sonic and Shadow Generations and provides insight into Shadow's serious background. We have prepared 3 episodes, and watching them before playing the game will enhance your connection to Shadow, allowing you to enjoy it more. Additionally, the game includes cutscenes that help people who are completely unfamiliar with Shadow and understand his character. We designed it to be accessible for those who are playing Sonic for the first time. Nakamura says Sonic Generation features content that allows players to trace Sonic's history, with plenty of materials and music included. Shadow Generations is similarly structured, so fans of Shadow will be pleased. And those who are not yet familiar with him can take this opportunity to become interested and delve deeper into his character to become fans. Can you tell us the highlights of Sonic Generations? They said this is a remastered version of the original release 13 years ago, but it's not just a simple port. Well, we'll see about that. I don't know. We've added a feature called Chow Rescue where players collect Chow scattered throughout various locations. This addition provides new insights, allowing players to discover places they might not have noticed in the original version. Cool for exploring, cool for replayability. It seems like a glorified Red Ring system though. Additionally, we've added the ability called the Drop Dash, which allows players to dash the moment they land on the ground. While this has become a standard feature in recent titles, it wasn't implemented in the original version. We hope players will enjoy discovering new strategies using this ability. I think with the classic Sonic levels, it's definitely going to be huge. As far as modern Sonic, I don't know how useful it'll be, but we'll see. Is the content of the stages unchanged from the original version? They said yes. At the time, I was responsible for level design, so upon revisiting it, there are places I'd like to change, but this time, I wanted players to experience the original version's impact as it is, so I held back those feelings. As for the graphics, we've adjusted the lighting and colors. It looks beautiful, even in 4K. This title includes 2 games. What is the play volume like? Nakamura, basically, what we talked about yesterday, said the length is going to be pretty similar or slightly less. So, yeah, Shadow Generations, that's the biggest thing about it, is that we're actually going to get $50 worth for our money. If the game's as long, if the game's close to Generations in length, but also similar in replayability, we're in for a good deal. Since they could be released separately, it's nice that they are bundled together. Did you consider releasing Shadow Generations on its own? Nakamura says, I believe those who have seen the movie will enjoy playing as Shadow, but I want to ensure that those who haven't seen it can have fun. By combining Sonic and Shadow Generations, we aim to create a classic title where players can say, if I play this, I'll understand Sonic. We included Sonic Generations, which has received high praise from players. If Shadow's popularity continues to grow, we may see more games featuring him in the future. More Shadow games? Yo, guys, I think everyone at this point needs to buy 2 copies of Sonic and Shadow Generations. In order to get more Shadow content, this game has to do well. So we're going to see what happens, but that's pretty big, guys. I mean, the fact that we could be seeing more Shadow type games or more games featuring Shadow, that's a big deal. That is the big outward appeal of this game. It feels like it's our redemption from Shadow the Hedgehog that came out in 2005, which kind of, it did not get great critical reception. And then from that point on, we got Sonic 06, and then people started to point fingers at other characters being in the Sonic games. But this cast of characters is so beloved. There's so many of them. People love them so much that it's like, we would like to see more Shadow games, right? We'd like to see more games featuring a lot of these characters because it feels like all of the characters have taken a backseat and Sonic's been basically the only playable character. But a lot of the things that make this Sonic series so appealing and different than other mascot platformers is like, we have these cool stories to tell. Sonic himself is just really cool. And we have this crazy cast of characters that we can use. There's a lot that they can tap into as opposed to shying away from that, which they kind of did in the 2010s. It seems like there's a lot riding on this game and it's going to set the tone for the rest of the decade. Like, this is the Sonic game that has the best chance to get an 80+ on Metacritic for the first time in I don't even know how long. So there's a lot of pressure on it, but also it looks very good. So we're going to see what happens. If this game does well and we get more games featuring Shadow, that's going to be unironically a W for the franchise. But let me know what you guys think about all this.